Good morning. Welcome to Pot Up with Matthews in the Morning. I'm Shane Matthews, your host today. My co-host JC is traveling on assignment. We'll be talking with him next week. But this is your Friday edition, and we come to you Monday through Friday, 8 a.m. to 9 a.m., talking sports, talking Gator sports, sports around the country. Today's show, we get packed with two guests. We're going to have Terry Norville from College Sports Today, talking recruiting, college football, the state of football here with the Big Three in the state of Florida. Also talk a little NFL with him as well. And then, of course, we will have our good buddy Chris Harry from FloridaGators.com talking Gator basketball. They had a big win on Tuesday night against the Providence Friars up in Brooklyn, New York. We'll get his thoughts and recap that game briefly. And they play tomorrow around 2:30-ish down in Sunrise, Florida in the Orange Bowl Classic against Utah State, which is a very, very good basketball team. We're coming to you from the Bahamas today, and the reason that is because bowl season kicks off this afternoon, and the first bowl on the slate is the Bahamas Bowl. And I'm anxious to watch this game. It's Buffalo versus the Charlotte 49ers, and it's a great story. Charlotte's only been playing football for about 7 to 8 years. Division I think only 1 or 2 years. And this is their first bowl game ever. And Mike Hill, former assistant athletic director here at the University of Florida, became their athletic director there last year. So they made great strides in their football program. So Buffalo and Charlotte kick off the bowl season in the Bahamas, which you see right here in our background. I'm not sure where the stadium is located here, but what a bowl trip for those kids. Also, the other bowl game this evening is the Frisco Bowl. Utah State, the team that the Gators will play in basketball tomorrow, playing Kent State. Big slate of NFL games tomorrow. There's 3 games on the NFL Network. We'll talk a little bit about those as well, but they all have playoff implications. So it should be a good Saturday with no college football, but the National Football League comes about. If you want to get involved with the program, you can text us at 352-353-7465. That's 352-353-7465. And again, probably around 8:15-ish, we'll have Terry Norville from College Sports Today joining the program. Last night, if you missed it, the Auburn Tigers in college football stay unbeaten. They defeated NC State, another good program. So Auburn is undefeated in the SEC. I believe they're the only SEC team that's undefeated. And the big game in the NBA, I know a lot of our people, our fans, don't care too much about the National Basketball Association. But the two best teams, according to records, played last night. The Milwaukee Bucks defeated the Lakers 111-104. I did not realize this. The Bucks are 25-4, and the Lakers are now 24-5. Some very good basketball teams there. So again, the number, if you want to text us, 352-353-7465. And again, we'll have Terry Norville joining the program around 8:15-ish. I can't tell you how many people, and speaking of that, just got a text right here, how many people I've seen around town, they text me, why can't the Gators recruit at an elite level? Folks, and we're going to talk about this during the entire program. We're a top 10. We ended up, 6th or 7th, depending on what publication you look at. But we are doing just fine. I'm not sure why people are so concerned about this. We have a text here from Eugene and Archer. He says, why is Dan Mullen not an elite recruiter? How the heck did we not sign a running back and only one wide receiver? Is he using the HBC to help with recruiting or winning over recruits? Could Tebow help in some capacity? Okay, a lot of questions from Eugene. Dan Mullen is a winning football coach. So whether he's an elite recruiter, I don't care. The bottom line is he's winning football games. He's out scheming. He's a great coach and a great developer. We probably will sign a running back eventually. We didn't get one in the early signing period. We did get one wide receiver, a very good player, a 4-star out of Dunellen. And he says, is he also using Coach Spurrier to help with recruiting? Absolutely not. Coach Spurrier may go to some recruiting dinners, may say a few words to the kids. You know, his big thing he likes to say when he was here recruiting is so many people save up their entire lives till they're 50 or 55, 60 years old, and then they move to Florida. Well, you have an opportunity to come live in the state of Florida at age 18. So And then he says, could Tebow help it in some capacity? What good's Tebow going to do? I mean, we've had a lot of great players here. You can only do so much. And I know a lot of people were upset with E.J. Smith, Emmitt Smith's son, signing with the Stanford Cardinal. But E.J. wants to do what E.J. wants to do. He doesn't have to follow in his father's footsteps. And I salute him. Maybe we wanted him. Maybe we didn't want him that bad. We never know. You only have so many spots. You can only sign so many kids. So I think the Gator Nation needs to take a step back, realize Dan Mullen has won 20 games in 2 years here, has a chance to win the 21st game against the Virginia Cavaliers on December the 30th down in the Orange Bowl. So we will be fine. Yes, you need some horses to win football games in the Southeastern Conference. They address their issues on the D-line and the offensive line. We all talk about the SEC being a line of scrimmage league. They are headed in the right direction. If you look at Florida's schedule next year, we talked about it yesterday on the program. Florida has a chance to be in the 14 playoff discussion immediately because of the schedule. The two toughest games on that schedule, LSU in the Swamp, and then the Georgia game in Jacksonville. Those are the two games you got to win. But I think Florida will be favored in every game next year on their schedule, except maybe the Georgia game. And they could be favored by that time, depending on how they're playing and how Georgia's playing. They'll be favored over LSU at home in the Swamp. So I think Florida has a very good chance to be in that discussion. Again, the number to call is, we appreciate your text there, Eugene, 352-353-7465. And remember, after the first break, we will be joined by Terry Norville, College Sports Today. I'm anxious to watch a lot of. I don't really get into the NFL until late in the year when the playoff discussion comes about. But tomorrow there's some really good games. The Buccaneers are playing the Houston Texans. The Texans need a win. The Bucs are sitting at 7-7. I don't think people realize that. Jameis Winston has played extremely well here of late. Still throwing a bunch of interceptions. You also have the Bills and the Patriots. The Patriots have had trouble beating teams with winning records. They've already beaten the Bills in Orchard Park. I think the Buffalo Bills will win tomorrow in New England. I just think they're the better football team. And the night game is a triple header on the NFL Network. The night game, 49ers and the Rams. The Rams need a win bad, but I just think the 49ers are one of the best teams in the NFL, and I think they'll beat the Rams. We got another text here. This is from Fred in Archer. He says, was Jeremy Foley sleeping at the wheel during the last 5 years of his rule and lasting impact? Not sure what that means, but listen. Jeremy Foley was a tremendous, tremendous athletic director here at the University of Florida. Did wonders for our programs. But I think what the problem was, and I don't blame him, is we won a lot of championships in the 90s in the Spurrier era. And we're talking football here. Then Urban came along in the 2000s, and we won, obviously, 2 national titles, some SECs. We didn't have the facilities then, but we were winning. Well, nobody had facilities then. I think once they started being built is where we fell behind, and their thought process was, we're the University of Florida. We've won titles. Without this stuff, we don't need it. But times have changed, and Scott Strickland has taken over and obviously building the new baseball facility, which we needed one, and going to put this football standalone facility. So should be a good deal for the Gators. And like I said, out the top 30 recruiting classes in America, we're pretty much the only school that does not have a standalone football facility. So what we're going to do here is we're going to take a quick time out. We're going to get our good friend Terry Norville from College Sports Today to join the program. This is Pod Up with Matthews in the Morning, live Monday through Friday, 8 a.m. to 9 a.m. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Pot Up with Matthews in the Morning. Our show is live Monday through Friday, 8 a.m. to 9 a.m. Advertising and sponsorship opportunities coming very soon in the new year, 2020. We're going to be joined now on the program by my good buddy Terry Norville from College Sports Today over in the Jacksonville area. Terry, welcome to the program. How are you, bud?
Hey, Shane. Glad to be here, man. Always ready to talk some college ball, man.
Yeah, well, you can't see, but we got your mug up on our screen here. We got the Bahamas in the background. You know, college bowl season starts out today, and we got the Bahamas Bowl. And, you know, it's a bowl game that a lot of people aren't really excited about. But, you know, what's intriguing to me about that game is Charlotte, who's only been playing college football for about 7 or 8 years. This is their first bowl trip, and I be dang, they get to go to the Bahamas. I mean, you can't ask for a better bowl game.
Isn't that great? Isn't that great? And, man, I've never got that assignment. I would love to get that assignment, wouldn't you? Go to the Bahamas for a week. And, you know, you wonder about that Charlotte program, man. That's a nice city, man. That's a nice city. If they ever get the right guy in place, who knows, 10, 15 years down the road, they'd love to be in the ACC, I'm sure.
You're absolutely right. So, Terry, let's, obviously a lot of people in our area here want to talk Gators. Before we get into some recruiting, I just want to get your thoughts on what Dan Mullen has done in year 2, winning another 10 games, possibly having a chance to win the 11th game. Give me your thoughts and assessment of how he and his staff have turned this program back around.
I'll tell you one thing, they've closed the gap, and that's what you had to do. Kirby Smart in Georgia, it was a free reign when he got in there. And no disrespect to Kirby, but when he got the job, the SEC East was a mess. When are you going to catch Tennessee and Florida down like they were? So the first thing they had to do is close the gap. They lost the game in Jacksonville. I was there, and everybody watched it. But the gap has been closed. I mean, the gap has been closed. Tennessee, I think, is coming on. Very, very impressive what they've done. Now, the key to Dan Mullen, I thought, when he got the job, people asked me, obviously, on my show, and we talked about it. I think Mullen is a floor-ceiling guy. We know Dan Mullen, when he got the job, he was 9 years in as a Power 5 head coach. You know Dan Mullen's never going to bottom out. Dan Mullen at Florida is not going to win 4 or 5 games, right? We know his floor is always going to be, a bad year is going to be eight wins. We don't know what his ceiling is, the ceiling, because Florida's ceiling needs to get up to 12 and be in the mix. Everybody can have a loss once a year and still be in the mix, but no, it's been impressive. And Shane, I know a lot of people are peeking ahead to next year, and there's a little bit of concern about the receivers and the passing game and what's going to happen. I think Dan Mullen's a genius offensively. He'll always have pass catchers, and it's just very, very impressive. And Shane, nationally, my God, everybody's figured out what Dan Mullen did, man. He is getting great. He and his staff and his program. The brand at Florida nationally is back as strong as it's been in years.
Yeah, I agree with you. Now, speaking of their offense, obviously this year it's a great story. If you take Joe Burrow out of the SEC, I think the next best story, maybe not just in the SEC, but in all of college football, is Kyle Trask.
Yeah.
It's just truly amazing how he has performed coming off the bench there since the game in Lexington.
Yeah, it really is. And, that was the theme. Unfortunately, the theme of college football 2019 was the injured quarterback. It struck everybody, it seemed like. From week 1, hell, 2 or 3 weeks into the season, USC was on their 3rd quarterback. But yeah, you couldn't have imagined Trask coming in and putting up the numbers. Florida averaged exactly. I'm looking at the numbers. Florida averaged 300 passing yards with their backup quarterback thrust into the season. I mean, that was amazing what he did, and it speaks to him. You're probably around him a lot more than I am. It speaks to him and his maturity. And, man, that's got to be hard going in that quarterback room every single day, every single week, and going, well, I'm still in that 2nd spot. I'm not going to play. Well, you know what? You might play. And damn sure did he got his chance. And he played his ass off.
Yeah, he took full advantage of the opportunity. Switching over to the defensive side of the ball, John Grenard had a phenomenal year, one of the best years I've ever seen from a Gator defensive player. That tells you with the transfer portal, you never know what may happen these days. When you look at what Todd Grantham has done defensively, obviously people want to go back, and I wish we could go back and play the Georgia game again. I don't think we had our best plan against them. But, again, you got to give credit to Jake Fromm because he played his tail off and probably his best game of his career this year. assess what you saw from the defense this year.
Well, starting with Grenard, I mean, if you juxtapose the games, the time that he would have played that he missed because of injury, I think he is, Derek Brown probably was as good as anybody defensively in the conference. Grant Delpit won the Thorpe Award. If Grenard got to play the games, he was A, injured totally, or B, gimping around. He was gimping around against Georgia. Zuniga was gimping around against Georgia. They weren't healthy. Grenard, I think, could have been player of the year, defensive player of the year, if he'd played the whole year. That was amazing. Shane, I like where you went with that, though. We're in the middle of recruiting, and signing period 1's done. Recruiting's still going on. There's signing period number 2. But Dan Mullen, I think now, he's done it 2 years in a row. 2 years in a row, to me, is a bit of a trend. Dan Mullen is the number 1 coach in America, I think, at this portal, this grad transfer, this not secondary recruiting, kind of the third leg of recruiting. Dan Mullen has shown that he really has a handle on this grad transfer portal type thing. So I wouldn't be surprised. Now, I don't think you're going to pull another Grenard out, but I wouldn't be surprised if Dan Mullen, between now and when all that portal grad transfer time period is over, I wouldn't be surprised if Florida doesn't find another impact player or 2 in that second recruiting kind of period, which is not the signing period, but you get my point. The grad transfer portal world, he's done a great job finding talent.
Well, there's no doubt about it. You think about the impact, as you mentioned, Grenard has had, Van Jefferson transfer from Ole Miss, and Grimes transfer from Ohio State. So, I think
Adam Schuler. Don't forget.
Oh, yeah, Schuler.
Adam Schuler. People overlook, man. He's in there doing the dirty work for 2 years. Adam Schuler did a nice job. Dunlap, before he got hurt, was a guy that was, transferred from North Carolina. But Mullen's got a knack, and I think that speaks to Dan Mullen and his staff. I think when you have tentacles out there, when you're well known and liked in the coaching world, because Shane, I think when you have these grad transfers, they go to their current coach and say, "Hey, coach, I think I just want to shake it up and go somewhere." I think it helps if you're liked in your profession. I think coaches get on the phone sometime and go, "Hey, man, hey, Dan, we got a guy, we got a safety. He's a good player. He's just ready to go get his master's degree and maybe come closer home." I think Dan Mullen gets a lot that way. I think Dan Mullen's liked in the profession, and that helps him in that grad transfer type world.
No doubt about it. We're speaking with Terry Norville out of Jacksonville. He's the host of College Sports Today. You can check him out, check his program out. We'll give you all that information here in a minute. But speaking of Mullen, I can't tell you how many people, and I'm sure on your show and around town, a lot of Gator fans are questioning, is he an elite recruiter? My point is, I don't really care. I'd rather him call ball plays on Saturday than worry about recruiting.
Sure.
But Florida, and I've said this for a long time, Terry, Florida goes to a fight with knives, to a gunfight with knives, because right now, until we have that facility built, we're not on a level playing field. What are your thoughts? What do you hear in the Jacksonville area and around the college football area about Mullen and his staff as recruiters?
Well, here's where I'm at with Dan Mullen. And I'm getting close to putting my theory out there and saying, come along or don't. I think Dan Mullen may evaluate talent different than all these recruiting services. And Dan Mullen has proven he's got an eye for talent. I don't care if it's got 5 or 6 or 10 stars next to it. I'm to the point where I think Dan Mullen identifies the type of player he likes and the traits and the athletic ability that he likes. And he's one of those be damned with the recruiting. We all want 5 stars, but I damn sure would take development and game day acumen over 5 stars. I trust it. And, he had that quote this week kind of saying what I just said. He was like, if we sign them at the University of Florida, we've determined they're 5 stars, And I think that was a dig at, and I'm not trying to pick at these kids that run these 5-star websites and all, but I think that was a dig at Dan Mullen saying, a bunch of 25-year-old kids that are putting stars next to guys, I think we know a little bit more. Shane, I don't know if you know this as well, though. Every year, there are only about, if you look at the sources out there and a composite of all these rankings, recruiting rankings, there are only about 25 5-star kids every year. Mm-hmm. There are 10,000 Division I college football players. Right. So, there aren't many. Think about that. There are 25-ish that get deemed 5-star every recruiting period. So for every roster, right, there's only 100 5-stars out there in college football any 4-year period, if there's 25 a year. There are 10,000 plus. You take 130 Division I programs times 85, that comes to around 11,000. So, I mean, really?
Yeah, I'm with you.
Hey, I'll take the players that Dan Mullen has identified, particularly the offensive players, and I'll go to a fight. Now, you know, I want him to get the best players he can, but I'll take his evaluation over a 25-year-old kid running Blue Star, you know, recruiting service.
Correct. Terry, we got a text here from Rick in Palatka, wants to get your thoughts on the state of the big three schools in Florida. He's a Miami Hurricane fan, and he says, do you think we have the right coach in place, and what are your thoughts about Mike Norville at Florida State?
I'll start with the second one first. Florida State is a absolute total rebuild. I don't know if you guys have had a chance to look at their roster, projecting the guys that have already said they're not coming back. Absolute total rebuild. If I'm Mike Norville, by the way, no relation, we spell our name a little different. If I'm Mike Norville, me and my agents with a recorder running would have sat down in a meeting with the FSU AD and the president saying, look, guys, I don't want you to evaluate me at all for the first 2 years. I think FSU is 2 years away from turning the roster and 3 years away from being on the field in the third quarter with the Clemsons and the Floridas. I think it's a total rebuild. Miami, I think, is a little more talented. Real concerning, though, boy, Diaz, that second half of the year, Manny Diaz really, really had the look. When you watch Miami football and saw him on the sideline, Manny Diaz had the look of a guy that said, damn, there's a lot that goes into this head coaching thing. You know, he's never been a head coach at that level. Mm-hmm. And, boy, great time for Florida right now because I think Miami and FSU, particularly FSU, is in total rebuild. Shane, if FSU was not playing in the ACC, I think they would be staring at a 3-win season next year. I think it's total rebuild in Tallahassee, and it's a big culture change. Miami's got to do something with their culture. It's a mess down there right now in that locker room.
Yeah, I agree with you. We're speaking with Terry Norville, College Sports Today. Excuse me. Let's talk real briefly. Your prediction of the 4-team playoff. Obviously, 4 tremendous football teams. How do you see it playing out?
Well, number one, boy, they got it right. You know, everybody likes to rip on the committee and this and that. This year they got it right. There's no bitching. I mean, those are the 3 undefeated teams, the major undefeated teams, and Oklahoma. There's nobody that was bitching behind Oklahoma. I hated to see Oklahoma lose some defensive players to suspension. And, you know, the odds on, you've got to favor, obviously, everybody's favoring LSU. It just, number one, they're really good. They're really talented. And Shane doesn't, it just feels like it's their year. That ball's bouncing their way.
Absolutely.
But I'm with you. Ohio State is really, really good. My God, the talent that Urban Meyer, no matter where he's at, can accumulate. And, you know, if Ohio State won that damn thing, if they win 2 more games, you almost have to give that title to Urban Meyer.
Yeah.
I mean, not only did he put that roster together, that's his coaching staff. It's not like a new coaching staff came in. He put that coaching staff together. I wouldn't, including Oklahoma. Now, Oklahoma would knock me back a step, but it wouldn't surprise me if any of those teams won the national title. But LSU is your favorite. It just seems like it's talent and a magical year for the Tigers.
Yeah, especially with the national title game being in New Orleans. Can you imagine what it's going to be like down there? Good gracious. Okay, yeah. Now my last question for you regarding the playoffs: would you like to see expansion?
Oh, absolutely. 8's the perfect number. I cannot wait till it goes to 8. I don't want, by the way, as much as I love college football, I don't want 16. 16 is not the number. The number's 8. And the number's really 8 because, Shane, we're very, very close. 3 years, 5 years, 8 years. We're getting close to where Division I football is going to get down to the Power 5. You're going to have 65, 70-ish teams. They're going to cut the top 50 out, and they should. So 8 is the right ratio. Can't wait. I mean, this year, though, man, how fun did it play out, man? The championship weekend, that was the quarterfinals. It really, I thought it really fell into place. But, no, I think 8's the great number, and we're not too far off from it.
Would you have the 5 power conference champions in and then 3 at large? Is that what you're suggesting?
Probably something like that. Probably something like that. And but then again, remember now, there's going to be there's one more big bang. I've called it for years. There's one more big bang coming in college football. The restructuring. So, I don't know how many group of fives will be around, So, but no, something like that. 4 or 5 majors, and then, have a little flexibility here and there. And I can't wait. I think it's coming. I think it's really close. It's really, really close.
All right, looking at the Orange Bowl, Florida and Virginia, how you see it playing out?
Shane liked the matchup for the Gators. Virginia's not real dynamic on offense, real dynamic quarterback, but I think they can chase Perkins down. Virginia's not a real sophisticated passing attack. I think Florida will athlete and just chase the quarterback down, and Florida should pull away in the second half and get that second win. It'll be nice to have that. Get that 11th win. It'll be nice to have 11 wins for the Gators. And I get it, though. Florida would like a little more marquee game. But, the way the tie-ins worked, certainly Notre Dame with 2 losses in Florida would have been a fun game down there. The Orange Bowl loves Florida. They're always going to grab Florida and that 50,000 tickets. But, Florida will win. They'll out-athlete that poor quarterback, and he'll be running for his life, I think, by the early fourth quarter.
Can't let you go before being over in Jacksonville. Give me your thoughts on what's going on with the Jaguars.
I tell you, man, I'm so heavy college, but just dysfunctional. I think Tom Coughlin, he just got let go. He got back in. The theory was a good one. The game kind of passed him by. And when, before it got bad, they were near the Super Bowl that first or second year when Coughlin came back as the front office guy. You had already heard, I heard some whispers that there was a real culture divide between the 23-year-old NFL guy in that locker room and Tom Coughlin and the Tom Coughlin way. And it got away. Shane, I think they're blowing everybody out. I think it's just a temporary. I think Marone's gone and maybe Dave Caldwell, but just totally dysfunctional. And boy, the fan base, what's left of them, are just like, my God, how long is this nightmare going to go on? I mean, you take that 2017 run, that one fluke year, and I mean, the Jaguars, they've been worse the last 15 years than the Browns, for God's sakes.
I'm with you. Hey, Terry, before we let you go, let everybody know where they can see your work.
Yeah, it's easy. Just Facebook or YouTube. Just go to Facebook and punch in College Sports Today, and then, I don't know, what do you do? I like them, or they like me, or somebody likes somebody. I don't know. But yeah, Facebook.
All right, that was Terry Norville from College Sports Today. We're going to take a quick timeout, come back, be joined by Chris Harry of FloridaGators.com.
Adding up some stuff here.
All right, here we go. Welcome back to Pod Up with Matthews in the Morning, live Monday through Friday, 8 a.m. to 9 a.m. Advertising and sponsorship opportunities will be coming in 2020. We're going to go back to the phone lines and be joined by our good buddy, Chris Harry from FloridaGators.com, senior writer over there. He is probably the closest human being that follows Mike White and the Gators around. Chris, how you doing, my man?
I'm okay. I'm just glad I'm a human being.
Yes, you are a human being. So let's. I know you got a busy day. It's probably travel day down to South Florida for you guys. Let's go back and talk about
That's right.
Tuesday night's win there at the Barclays Center against Providence. Do you think that was the best overall performance that Florida's put together all year?
Yeah, I mean, you could make a case, Shane. It was either that one or the Miami game that they played up in Charleston. Both neutral site games, both against high major opponents. I could also throw the Xavier game in there up in Charleston. Xavier's probably a better team than both those teams. You're talking about going wire to wire with the lead. You're talking about making shots from the get-go. Granted, Providence just couldn't throw it in the East River from up there. Some of that was Florida, some of that was Providence. Providence has some issues in terms of chemistry and what's going on with them, but Florida wasn't concerning itself with that. They kept their eye on the ball. And again, we talked about some last week in your studio, I believe, or maybe it was the press conference that day, but Mike White went public with some admissions about having junk in the offense that he ran with this team from middle of summer when they first got here and well into, I want to say, 3 or 4 games into the season to try to, I don't want to say simplify things, but he tried to structure some things more to help these younger guys kind of figure some stuff out and figure some stuff out as these guys kind of learn to play on the fly. And I think the results, the Butler game was a 14-point loss, but I thought the offense did look better. Mike White thought the offense looked better. The offense obviously looked a lot better the other day, and obviously got a big boost from a different kind of look from Trey Mann off the bench, who kind of gave you that McDonald's All-America feel that he kind of had when he arrived here in the summer.
Yeah, that's what I was going to bring up. Trey Mann, highly touted coming out of the Villages, really a Gainesville kid. But I've heard you mention so many times how athletic and what a good player you see in practice every day. Could this have been the game that gets him out of that slump?
Well, you don't know because, again, he's a young kid or whatever. But what we see in practice every day is the best scorer on the team, bar none. A guy who Jordan Minshew, an assistant coach, always just talks about get buckets. Well, Florida hadn't really had a bucket getter. I would think the closest people they've had to that the last few years were Jalen Hudson and Kayvon Allen. And Kayvon Allen didn't like driving the ball because he didn't like contact. And Jalen Hudson was remarkably inconsistent with his ability to score. Trey Mann he's got the long arms. He sees things. He finds creases. He can hang in the air. But he can also step back and hit threes. And he hadn't done that. He hadn't done that 3-point shooting stuff a lot, but he can do it, believe me. And what he just really needed was some confidence. I sat with him a little bit in the locker room after the game, and he goes, I just kept thinking back on the games that we lost, and if I had just done a little bit more in each of those games, maybe we would have been in position to win. And he's exactly right. And you can say that about some other guys on the team, but Trey Mann's taken a little bit of ownership. That's encouraging for a freshman. But we know how talented he is. That wasn't going to be a question. But in that game, in an NBA arena, 4 out of 8 from the floor, he hit one of his 2 threes. He'd been actually struggling from the free throw line. He was 4 for 5 on his free throws. He made some elite finishes through contact, and just played with more air, played more downhill. I can say some similar things about Quez Glover, who we'd seen flash some before. Obviously up in Charleston, what have you, but he was pretty good the other night too. He just needs to maybe hone his ability to run offense a little better and tone down the turnovers.
Yeah, Quez had some questionable shots at times. What do you think of the way Dante Basset? I thought he brought great energy and made some really good plays off the bench.
Well, he was necessary, Shane, because and this is something that is unusual. Now, Kerry Blackshear of Virginia Tech didn't get in foul trouble. Okay, he's got, I think, 5 games out of the 10 games this year where he has 4 fouls. Mm-hmm. 2 where he's been DQ'd, and another where he's been thrown out of the game for an elbow. So that wasn't what he was up there, and he's done a mea culpa on that, and he says I'm putting my teammates in tough positions by not being on the floor enough. I think he averaged almost 31 minutes a game at Tech last year. He's right around 25 and a half now. So they need more from him. But to your point, when he's not in there, then someone's got to take his place, and it could be Omar Payne or it could be Dante Basset. I think the first go-to is Omar Payne because of what he can do defensively as a shot blocker, but he still doesn't know what he's doing a lot of times, where he's supposed to be and what have you. Dante Basset is a fourth-year junior. He's got a little bit of he likes physicality. He doesn't mind mixing it up. Now, he fouls a lot and what have you, but like you mentioned, the minutes that he gave were productive minutes. I think he got 5 rebounds. I'd like to see him finish a little bit stronger around the rim, but I mean, he's kind of who he is. And that is who he's going to be now that he's in his 4th season with the Gators. But, yeah, he was helpful the other night coming off. He's kind of what, the Gators thought going into the season before he got hurt that Gorjak Gak may be that guy. Gorjak Gak didn't even get on the floor the other night, and, he's kind of like still trying to work his way back.
We're speaking with Chris Harry, senior writer for FloridaGators.com, talking Gator basketball. Before we switch over and talk about Utah State, Kiante Johnson had a double-double. Is he the guy that kind of holds this entire team together?
But he's a weird case because he's an undersized 4, and I've sat next to some scouts who ask questions about him, and they are intrigued by him because his length is really, really good. Again, another guy who plays downhill. When he decides he's going to attack the basket, he's really, really strong, and he's a hard guy to kind of keep from getting where he wants to go. But I mean, second double-double of the year. Everyone remembers he had 2 double-doubles in the SEC tournament last year, and no freshman had any in 20 years since Donnell Harvey. He's now the leading scorer on the team, second leading rebounder on the team. Really, really good player, really, really productive player. He's also not a bad three-point shooter. I think he's right around 36, 37%. He made one the other night. So he's doing his job. He's just an out-of-position kind of guy. If he was 2 inches taller, he might be a lottery pick, Shane, because of his productivity in and around the basket, his ability to jump, his athleticism, and ability to get tips and extra possessions for the Gators.
Tomorrow afternoon, the Gators play the Aggies of Utah State. Should tip around 2:30-ish, depending on how long the FSU South Florida game goes. What can you tell us about Utah State? I know they're a very good basketball team.
Yeah, they're better than people would think. They won 28 games last year. They were co-champions of the Mountain West Conference. They won the Mountain West Conference tournament. They had I'm telling you this because Nevada played in that league last year. Nevada had an unbelievable season. Obviously, Florida eliminated them in the first round of the NCAA tournament. Their coach is now the coach at Arkansas, Eric Musselman. But this Utah State team, or last year's Utah State team, won both those championships. Again, a share of the regular season, won the tournament. Their best player is a guy named Sam Merrill. He was the Mountain West Conference Player of the Year last year and the MVP of the postseason tournament. He's a guy who can do a lot of everything. He's one of those guys, like several of these. I think he's 25 years old. Graduated from high school graduated from high school in Utah. Went on a 2-year mission. And came back, and now you say he's a senior. He's really like a 6th-year senior. I think he's married. They got guys that are mature and older and smart basketball players. He's averaging 17 points a game. I think he got 20 or more in 20 games last season. He's got 35 in the championship clinching win over Colorado State last year. He's a guy who's a problem. Another guy, Justin Bean, is a forward. He's only 6'7", Shane, but he's 5th in the country in rebounding. He's averaging 11.5 rebounds a game. So they're going to have to contain him. Just the other night in their last game, they beat South Florida in one of these triple headers, kind of like what Florida was in up in Brooklyn. This one was in Houston. He made a stick back at the buzzer in overtime to beat USF by 1 point. So this is a good team. They don't play particularly fast. They beat LSU earlier this year, so that's kind of like something that Florida should take note of. And it's certainly down there in South Florida, in Sunrise, in that BT&T Center, BB&T, excuse me. It's not the atmosphere is not great. It's like half filled. Mm-hmm. There are a lot of Gator fans down there, but it's one of these danger games right before Christmas. Billy Donovan hated them. I can think back some really good Florida teams lost to Jacksonville, lost to South Alabama, lost to Richmond right around Christmas time because guys are thinking about going out on the break. And they're ready to go home and see their families and whatever. Some of them, by the way, will get on planes down in Miami or Fort Lauderdale and go home from down there once this game's over. So that's always a kind of something, a yield sign that you kind of like play with when you're a coach. But if Florida can go down there, okay, and beat this team, a pretty good team, a top 50 Ken Palm team or top 55 Ken Palm team, now they've won 7 out of 8. Kind of put that those UConn and FSU games in the rear view a little. You kind of find your ground a little bit. You come back. You got one more game against Long Beach State on December 28th before you start the SEC season. It's a big momentum game, Shane, and it really would behoove the Gators to go down there and start feeling a lot better about themselves with a W.
Last question before I let you go. A lot of teams in the SEC have been upset. Kentucky lost to Utah the other night. LSU lost at home to East Tennessee State. North Carolina's not in the SEC, but I don't even know if they're going to make the tournament. What's going on in college basketball right now?
Well, it's parity.
Yeah.
I mean, it's absolute parity, and a lot of teams are struggling to score. I mean, a big game last weekend was the Memphis Tennessee game.
Mm-hmm.
What was the final score? That 51-47.
Yeah, it's very low scoring.
Very low scoring. I know James Wiseman won play, but Memphis has some really good players. Tennessee has some really good players. You're just seeing a lot of games where guys aren't making shots, and does that have something to do with the longer 3-point line this year? It might. Yeah. I'm waiting to see what some of these people start crunching some numbers nationally about where the 3-point shot percentages are now versus last year, and that'll play itself out. And I think people will look at it also in conference play to see where it is. But there are a lot of good teams. There are a lot of good teams out there, and I think for the fans that wanted to jump off the cliff a couple of weeks ago, with relative to where Florida was at 6-3 with the losses that they had. Just understand they're good basketball teams around the country, and it is still just December. There's a lot of time to not only get better, but a lot of time and a lot of wins left out there to be had.
All right, Chris, safe travels down to Sunrise. Merry Christmas to you and your family. Thanks for joining the program. We'll talk to you soon, buddy.
Merry Christmas, Shane. Thank you.
All right. That's Chris Harris, senior writer for FloridaGators.com. We're going to take our final time out. We'll be right back. You're listening to Pod Up with Matthews in the Morning. Welcome back. It's Pod Up with Matthews in the Morning, live Monday through Friday, 8 a.m. to 9 a.m. We want to thank Terry Norville from College Sports Today in the Jacksonville area for joining us, giving us some great information. And our good buddy Chris Harry, FloridaGators.com senior writer, who travels with the Gator basketball team year-rounds at every practice. He's probably the most informative person out there about Gator basketball. We just had a text from George. George didn't say where he's from, but he wanted me to tell me who I thought was going to win the 3 NFL games tomorrow. I'm just going to pick some winners here, who I think is going to win the game. I think the Bucks will win the game, might win the game, but I'm going to say the Houston Texans because they have to win the game, I believe, to stay in the playoff hunt. I could be 100. I'm not 100% correct on that. I'm not sure. Buffalo, New England. I like the Buffalo Bills. I just think they're a better football team than the Patriots. I think the Patriots are heading in the wrong direction. And then 49ers. I like the 49ers at home over the Rams. So again, we have the Bahamas in our background here, because today bowl season kicks off at 2 o'clock today. The Bahamas Bowl, which I think is a phenomenal bowl for especially these two teams. Charlotte, first ever bowl trip, and then Buffalo. Can you imagine those kids having fun? They could be in Buffalo, New York right now, but instead they're in the Bahamas. And then the Frisco Bowl this evening, Utah State and Kent State. We'll be back on Monday morning, and we'll recap the entire weekend of what went on in the world of sports. Get you prepared for next week with Christmas. Our schedule is going to be maybe just a Monday, Friday show. We don't know yet, but we look forward to having you back here. You've been listening to Pod Up with Matthews in the Morning. See you later.